Hello and welcome to the East Valley Business Podcast. We are here today with Melinda Morrison Gulick, the Chief Executive Officer of First Things First in Arizona. And Melinda, I'd love to start off with a little bit of your background to tell our viewers about who you are.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're delighted to be with you today talking about all things early childhood. I started my career actually as a journalist and found that wasn't for me. So I went into a short stint, about 3 years, in nonprofit management, mostly focused on fundraising. And out of there, I found my way to the private sector. So I worked for 14 years in the Valley for a company real estate development firm called DMB Associates. It was a wonderful experience and I think really valuable to bring to First Things First.
Absolutely. It's good to have a variety of experience to bring a different lens, a different perspective to industry. Is there a moment in your career where you felt like there's an alignment of the things that you're good at that you should be doing, a moment where you were just really proud?
There is. So DMB is known throughout the nation for building really vibrant, connected communities. And it was my job at DMB to take the ideas that we had, the brand that we sold people when they moved into the communities, and bring it to life. So for example, at DC Ranch, the brand tagline was "Where You Belong." And it was my job to turn that into the place where people belonged, actually as an operating part of the business. And so I'm very proud of taking that idea and turning it in, not just to reality, but to a business that operates still today.
Absolutely. And that's, I feel like, a name that we all know.
It is, yes. We should, Verado and DC Ranch, yes.
So the work kind of speaks for itself. But with First Things First, you're doing great work in early childhood development. And we're facing a childcare crisis. And I'd love to dive into a little bit of that and that crisis's impact on our economy.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that the pandemic taught us, among many others, is that when people went remote, we actually got a window into their homes, and what an important part of the workforce and the employee experience having affordable, accessible, quality childcare is to keep people working. And so First Things First is Arizona's early childhood agency. We were founded in 2006, actually by a citizens initiative that was driven by business leaders, particularly Nadine and Eddie Basha, were the founders of this movement, and were funded by the tobacco tax. And so about 40% of Arizona's tobacco tax revenue comes to First Things First, and we use that for programs in 3 particular areas: quality early learning, family support, and children's health. We've focused primarily on quality early learning for the last several years because the childcare crisis has really bubbled to the top, not only for an issue with working families, but also for employers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talked a little bit before we got started here today about that responsibility of the employer to really take care of their people. And it's the right thing to do, but it's also good business practice, right? To invest in your people, to give them the resources that they need. And so on the topic of resources, what do you have available for the community?
Right. So in terms of resources, we have a website, qualityfirst.org, where working families, working parents, or caregivers can go and find a quality childcare center either near their home or near their workplace. We also provide for income-eligible families scholarships for childcare assistance. So there are 2 ways that a family can get assistance for childcare in Arizona. One is through the Department of Economic Security. And if they qualify, if their income and their working status qualifies, they can get a subsidy for childcare. At First Things First, it's not perfect, but we try to serve the families who don't meet the income eligibility requirements for DES. So we serve families who are at 165% of the federal poverty level to 300% of the federal poverty level, and provide scholarships for childcare assistance at quality early childhood centers throughout the state. why this is important for employers, even if their employees are not in that bracket. It's important when you go to work as a parent or a caregiver to know that your child is safe and thriving. 90% of brain development happens before the age of 6, before kindergarten. And so knowing that your child is in a quality early learning center where they're developing both the intellectual and the emotional regulation skills to be ready for kindergarten helps you show up and be present in the workplace.
Absolutely. And in that development, that early stage development, so important. It's one of the reasons I feel grateful that we have an organization that is doing that work in the community, and to be in a city like Tempe where pre-K was a priority for our, elected officials.
Right.
And so with that, Montessori schools, obviously childcare centers are struggling with funding, right? For you all to be subsidized by a tobacco tax, less people smoking, right? We're kind of seeing a downtrend, right? We don't want people to smoke.
Correct.
But we've been mindful as a state of where that funding is going. So what are we looking for from policymakers to really carry forward that mentality of sustaining these systems? What message and what call to action do you have for our policymakers?
Well, it's a twofold message. We have the workforce of today, so ensuring that employees go to work comfortable and confident that their children are safe and having a quality experience. And also the workforce of tomorrow, meaning if we invest in early childhood, as Arizonans, we will have the workforce we need for the jobs that we're attracting to Arizona over the next 20 years. I don't know if you've seen this, but the jobs we're creating in Arizona, we currently don't have enough people in Arizona to fill the jobs that we're attracting and project to attract over the next 25 years. So investing in every single one of Arizonans birth to 5 will ensure that we have that workforce ready when the time comes. So early childhood education pays off because there's less intervention with special education services. The earlier you catch a special need, the easier it is to catch up with your peers in school. It results in less grade retention, meaning children being held back in elementary school, less interactions with juvenile justice and other social service needs that a family or a child might need over time. So the less we're paying there and spending on those services, the better for the state budget, which we know is in a very challenging position. So an investment in early childhood is great for employees today, employers today, and we should talk about the impact on employers. But also in that workforce development, we want people ready to whether it's go right to work from high school for a college, whether it's a 4-year university or an associate's degree or a certification. And investment in early childhood dramatically increases an individual's opportunity to pursue something post high school.
You're speaking my language. Workforce development.
Workforce development.
Yeah. And childcare is, I feel like, a newer part of that discussion. Not to say that it's a new issue, but it's coming up more frequently. And I think we kind of touched upon that struggle that those individuals feel in addressing that. If they're having a challenge finding affordable care, I think they can go on your website, right, and find some great providers.
They can. I think also we've seen, and we talked a little bit before, that this has been seen in the past as really a personal issue, a family issue, or a women's issue. And what we've understood over the course of the last 4 years is that it really is an economic issue. So the U.S. Chamber Foundation and the Bipartisan Policy Center did a study about Arizona's childcare landscape in 2019, so before the pandemic. And it showed that the lack of quality, accessible, affordable childcare is having an impact on employers of $1.4 billion in Arizona, due to employee absences and turnover. So we know that when you have to replace an employee, it's about a 1.5 times their annual salary. And so the aggregate of that was a $1.4 billion impact. But to the state, this is 2019. To the state, it was a $348 million impact in lost state tax revenue for people not working because of the primary issue being their inability to find childcare. 48% of Arizona is a childcare desert, meaning there's more kids in that age group who are in need of childcare than there are spaces available in quality or any childcare providers throughout the state. So it is highlighted now as an economic issue. We're also seeing, there was just a recent report from Ready Nation that brought those numbers forward and also quantified the lost income for the individual employee. And that jumps to about $5 billion in impact. Think of all that spending that working families could be doing, all of the other ways that people participate in the economy, start your own business, buy something from a small business, from a large business. It's about a $5 billion impact. And so it's gone from that private family issue where we didn't really talk with our employers or our colleagues about the challenges around childcare and also seen as primarily a women's issue, which it's not, to really an issue impacting Arizona's economy. And we know that the state is in a very challenging economic scenario with our state budget. So what would that $350 million do to solve the budget crisis if we could get more people to work?
Absolutely. And you talk about getting more people to work, getting people back into the workforce. I think some people forget that when we see these jobs reports, yes, we're kind of gaining that momentum back that was lost during COVID. But some people didn't come back.
Right.
Some people had challenges that kept them out of the workforce. And at a time when we need jobs filled, we need more talent than ever, these initiatives are bringing people back to the workforce. I think you gave me a number earlier.
I did, yes. So when the Biden administration has issued 2 executive orders that touched on childcare as an economic issue. One was as it relates to the cost of childcare and also of elder care. And the other is the CHIPS Act. So interestingly, the CHIPS Act, which is we're talking about in Arizona all over the place, has a provision for childcare. And if a company is going to apply for over $150 million in incentives, they have to submit a childcare plan, not only for their employees, but for the construction workers who are building the facilities. And part of that research around those executive orders showed that if we solved childcare nationally, 11 million people would return to the workforce. Primarily women, but not all women. And so we know that families look all different, and some moms stay at home and some dads stay at home and some caregivers, choose to stay at home. But if we solved childcare from an affordability, accessibility, and quality standpoint, we could see an influx of 11 million people returning to the workforce, which would be a huge engine for the U.S. economy.
That's incredible. And I am grateful to the Biden administration for addressing it with an executive order, but, we're still up against it.
We're still up against it.
And I think a lot of real change happens at a community level, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to bring this to a relatable level for our members of the chamber, members of other chambers, business owners at large. What's a step that they can take after hearing this conversation to, one, either support these childcare centers or jump in as advocates to really, help encourage our policymakers?
So from an individual employer and member level, I would encourage them to first find out how childcare is impacting their employees. And we have tools on our website, firstthingsfirst.org. We have an employer toolkit that includes some survey questions that help them ferret out where childcare is impacting their employee wellness. Are they missing work? Do they have access to, do they know how to find quality childcare? There are other things in an employer's benefit plan, like regular schedules. It's nearly impossible for a working parent to work a rotating schedule because childcare centers, you're paying, for a certain slot of time and for a certain number of days.
Absolutely.
And so having those regular schedules, and some employers choose to subsidize childcare, or they include the childcare savings account type benefit plans in their employee benefits packages. Mm-hmm. We also have for policymakers a tool on our website so that they can see some best practices, of which Tempe is one of them, how municipalities are helping to solve childcare in their communities, because they know that a strong economy really requires both quality public education for school-age kids, potentially post-high school age kids, but for our youngest citizens as well, kids birth to 5. And so that strong economy really is a P20 initiative for a strong local economy, good property values, business attraction, employee wellness, and employee satisfaction. There are very interesting examples of the ways that cities in Arizona have partnered with their local school district. Tempe is another great example of that, either to subsidize the cost of pre-K, to provide, if they have excess space in a school district facility, that they can provide excess space and convert those into infant, toddler, and preschool rooms. We've seen that really successful throughout Arizona. We also have some tri-share models in the United States and quadra-share models in the United States, where a municipality, whether that's a city, a town, a county, an employer and the parent or caregiver shares in the cost of childcare, so that the workforce in the childcare center, which we haven't talked about yet, is also paid a living wage. So the average cost of an employee, early childhood educator, is about $13 an hour. That is not a livable wage. They often do not provide paid time off or any other retirement or other employee benefits. And so having those tri-share models, having that municipal or government influx into the cost of childcare really does help increase the wage. We know that a livable wage working in an early childhood center is between $21 and $25 an hour, which, by the way, is not a luxurious lifestyle. That's a pretty tough, on the ropes, on the edge salary for people. They're really obviously doing it because of a passion for young children, which
Absolutely.
we want to encourage. But we've got to figure out a way to raise the wages and increase the benefits so that we can retain a workforce in early childhood as well, and see it as an honorable career path, much like we see K-12 education.
Absolutely. Yeah, you talked about a career path, right? Creating those avenues for people to grow in their career on top of addressing the wages. I've seen some chambers in other states. Mm-hmm. They bring people together to say, how can we raise these wages to stay competitive? Because I love that there's funding in the CHIPS Act. I do feel like it's putting increased pressures on the existing childcare centers, right?
Well, yes. And just to clarify, there's no funding for childcare in the CHIPS Act. There is a requirement in the CHIPS Act, if you're going to apply for more than $150 million, that the employer themselves, the manufacturer themselves, submit a plan. So whether they use that incentive to fund childcare, it's not a direct correlation. So while those executive orders did raise awareness and got the conversation going, there is still no funding specific in the CHIPS Act for childcare.
Okay.
A bit
of
challenging.
Work to still do. I appreciate the clarification. Yes. So those childcare allocations, we'll call them private allocations, are creating private solutions.
Potentially, yes. And I think the other challenge is, and the reason why that component is part of the CHIPS Act, is that when you bring that number of employees to a community, often in a ground up facility, the idea is that they'll create new space, more capacity for childcare and for children in that community and from those construction workers and also employees of the manufacturer, rather than gobble up all the existing space. Because as I said earlier, there is already nearly twice the number of children in Arizona who need childcare, but then there is space available. And so that was really an impetus to encourage manufacturers to create new spaces in childcare. And they're solving it in a number of different ways, whether it's a licensed facility right on their own campus to partnering with a local childcare center or several to reserve spaces for their employees. Some are subsidizing the cost of childcare, some are not. It's a mixed bag. But that's the point of the CHIPS Act too, is to do what the manufacturer think is best for their employee population.
Okay. And for an organization thinking about the best path to take, would it be worth picking up the phone and talking to your team maybe a little bit?
Sure. We would certainly be happy to help anybody navigate that opportunity, whether they just need to figure out what the challenge is with their employee population or where they might find access for their employees to childcare. And I would really direct people first, members and employers, to our website and the employer resources area so that they can really understand the issue and how to talk about it, make it a totally normal and safe conversation to have in the workplace.
Absolutely. And a chamber of commerce really in any part of the valley would be a great way, I think, for people to connect with other employers.
Absolutely.
To learn more. I've heard great things about Sky Harbor.
Absolutely.
They've established a program. I have to make a shout out to Councilmember Keating here in Tempe for backing pre-K.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Hodge for being a great advocate in education and really bringing all the pieces to the table. Because what you're talking about is a complex and compound problem. And that's what creates a crisis.
Right.
It's when the dominoes start to fall and let's say these subsidies go down, childcare centers have less revenue, less quality, and maybe they fall out of that quality rating.
Right.
That's a risk, right?
It's an absolute risk, yeah. And so Quality First is our signature early learning program, and it provides professional development for early childhood educators and also incentives for owners or providers or center directors to either improve their facility or increase wages with spot bonuses, attendance bonuses, and things like that. We try not to increase the hourly wage just in case we can't maintain that, but doing some important incentives along the way to retain employees is very important and a benefit of participating in Quality First.
Absolutely. And it's all about that proactive approach, right? So hopefully our state policymakers can really get together. I think they've achieved putting some funding in this year's budget for the first time. Is that, I understand it?
So for the first time in 15 years, the state did allocate $13 million, $12 million to childcare assistance, which is given the extreme challenge that the legislature had and the governor's office had developing a budget for Arizona this year.
Absolutely.
Their recognition of childcare as an issue was really demonstrated by that allocation of $12 million to childcare assistance. The request was for $100 million, which we knew that was a far reach, but we feel really grateful and really thankful that the issue has gotten enough attention that the legislature did make an investment. And I hope that over the next several years, we'll continue to educate policymakers on what a quality, good investment in early childhood is, and how if a child shows up ready for kindergarten, that the cost to educate them or provide special services or juvenile justice services goes down dramatically. But we've got to get that investment in early childhood first. And so we'll start having that conversation throughout Arizona in hopes that in several years we'll create a model system for the United States.
Absolutely. And I think this is a very valuable conversation to have today. It will
Thank you.
continue.
Yes.
I think, we're always happy to join those discussions if we can support from the business side of
Yes.
things. And yeah, the work continues. Got to applaud the legislature for
Absolutely.
taking a great first step.
Mhm.
And we call on the business community, right, to support. I think childcare centers, I'd encourage them as well to engage with chambers, to engage with you all,
Absolutely.
to learn more and not have that struggle alone.
Absolutely. And also, I think the other opportunity and benefit a childcare center could have by joining a chamber or engaging with the business community is that mentorship. So lots of people get into childcare because they love children.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make them an excellent business person,
Absolutely.
business operator. And so my own participation as a member of a chamber and on the board and an executive committee for 24
Absolutely.
years.
Shout them out by name.
Scottsdale. I'm so proud to be on the executive committee of the Scottsdale Chamber. That, that business mentorship, that connection with professional services. So I need an accountant. I need a bookkeeper. I need a lawyer. I need a marketing team. I need sales training. Your local chamber is your best opportunity to get that kind of mentorship with somebody who's vetted and known and credible, which is really the power of the local business community, and why we've had conversations from Bullhead City to Douglas with chambers about how important it is for us to engage and understand the issue on the ground in that town. And there's no better source for that than the local chamber.
Absolutely. Really appreciate that note. Love the work that we do in the community. Love the work that you all are doing in Scottsdale, across the East Valley. We're always happy to engage, and of course today. So I want to say thank you for being here. And I also want to ask, how could people get in touch with you? How can these community leaders who may want to have these deeper level conversations, how can they connect with you?
So I'll send people back to the website. My contact information is on the website, and we have a whole team of specialists there who, if your question is really more about quality early learning, Ginger Sandweg, our senior director of quality early learning, is the best person to reach out to. But obviously, I'm happy to talk with our friends in Tempe anytime, and I'm on the website.
Thank you for your accessibility.
Of course, yes.
And we hope to have you back on this podcast.
I hope so too.
Later on, and we can celebrate the work that's going to be done.
Absolutely.
We have to channel that positivity that people will see the task at hand.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Lots of celebrations along the way.
Absolutely. Celebrate all the wins,
That's
big
right.
and small.
That's right.
Fantastic.
Thank you so
much.
much
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of East Valley Business, the podcast. We hope you tune in again and have a great day.